Most people think the 1% were born with something different: luck, privilege, timing. But what if I told you the real difference isn't money, it's mindset? Because wealth isn't just built in your bank account. It's built in your behavior, in your decisions, in the way you think about time, risk, and value. This audiobook, How to Manage Your Money Like the 1%, is not about greed. It's about discipline. It's about understanding that money is not power. Control over money is. In this audiobook, you will discover the truth behind how the world's most financially secure people manage their lives, the psychology behind their habits, the invisible systems that protect their wealth, and the mental frameworks that make their success sustainable. We'll explore 10 core chapters, each one revealing a mindset shift or strategy that separates those who survive from those who thrive. 1. The 1%. Mindset, thinking differently about money. 2. Breaking the cycle of financial fear. 3. The system of control where every dollar goes. 4. The wealth equation, how the rich multiply value. 5. Mastering delayed gratification. 6. The power of cash flow. 7. Emotional intelligence with money. 8. Investing, like the 1%. Principles, not predictions. 9. Building financial legacy. 10. The silent power of simplicity. And along the way, you'll learn something deeper, that wealth is not an amount. It's awareness. Because here's the painful truth. Most people don't manage their money. They manage their emotions around money. They spend to feel better. They save when scared. They invest out of hype. They avoid conversations out of fear, and that's why even those who earn a lot often keep so little. But today, that changes, because you're about to think like the 1%. And when you think like them, you'll start to live like them. This is not financial advice. This is mental reprogramming. This is emotional intelligence applied to your bank account. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The 1% Mindset. The biggest difference between the rich and the rest isn't intelligence, it's identity. The 1% don't see money as the goal. They see it as a tool, a mirror reflecting how disciplined, strategic, and patient they are. Most people chase money to escape problems. The 1% attracted by solving them. They don't ask, how can I make more money? They ask, how can I multiply value? That's the first mental shift. Stop trading your time for comfort and start trading your energy for growth. The 1% understand leverage. They don't just work hard. They make decisions that keep paying them back. They study how systems, people, and assets work together, because they know the moment you learn how to make money work for you, freedom becomes possible. The 99% ask, can I afford this? The 1% ask, will this make me wealthier in time, knowledge, or returns? It's not about greed. It's about optimization. Every dollar has a direction. Every minute has a purpose. This is how they think. Money is not something to spend. It's something to deploy. They treat money like soldiers. Each one must go out into the world and bring back more. Now ask yourself, how many of your dollars are working and how many are sleeping? That question alone can change your financial destiny. Because here's the truth. The rich don't get richer because they earn more. They get richer because they lose less. They protect their capital. They play defense first. Then they use time and patience as a fence. This is the quiet discipline of the 1%. They don't chase excitement. They chase efficiency. Chapter 2. Breaking the Cycle of Financial Fear. Money isn't emotional, but humans are. Fear is the greatest tax ever created. It silently drains your wealth before the market ever can. People fear losing money more than they desire to grow it. That's why they save and stay stuck. They hide from opportunity, thinking safety is freedom. But the 1% know this: fear fades when knowledge grows. They study what they fear. They educate themselves on how systems work, not to predict the future, but to remove emotional guesswork. Financial fear comes from one thing: not understanding the game. The moment you learn the rules, fear turns into curiosity. That's what separates emotional spenders from strategic thinkers. The 1% don't let fear guide their choices. They let numbers and logic do the talking. And when uncertainty hits, they don't freeze. They prepare. They hold cash when others panic. They buy when others sell. They understand that fear creates opportunity. Because when everyone else is emotional, clarity becomes your competitive edge. The goal isn't to remove fear completely, it's to recognize it, name it, and act anyway. Ask yourself, how many opportunities have I lost because I hesitated? How much wealth has my fear protected or prevented? You don't overcome fear by ignoring it. You overcome it by understanding it. The 1% aren't fearless. They're informed. That's the difference. And once you master that, you'll stop reacting to money and start commanding it. You've just learned the first two foundations of the 1% mindset: awareness and courage. But knowing how to think differently is just the beginning. The next step is the one most people never take: building a system. Because the 1% don't rely on discipline alone. They rely on structure. They don't hope to save or invest. They automate it. They design their money to flow in a way that forces success. That's what we'll uncover next: the secret system of control that builds quiet wealth, even while you sleep. Chapter 3: The System of Control, Where Every Dollar Goes. Here's the truth most people never learn: wealth isn't built by making more. It's built by managing better. The 1% don't count their money. They control it. They know exactly where every dollar goes, what every expense means, and what every investment is doing for them. Because they design their finances with purpose. Money without direction becomes chaos. And chaos doesn't build wealth. It destroys it quietly. Ask the average person where their money goes, and they'll say, "I'm not sure. Bills, maybe savings, maybe debt." Ask the 1%, and they can tell you to the dollar how their cash flows, what percentage feeds growth, what percentage protects risk, and what percentage funds their life. They don't wait to see what's left at the end of the month. They start the month by commanding their money where to go. This is what you must understand. If you don't assign your money a mission, it will always disappear. Every dollar needs a job. Every paycheck needs a purpose. The wealthy operate like financial architects. They don't rely on willpower. They rely on systems. They automate their habits. They create invisible rules that work even when emotions don't. Here's how. They divide their income into intentional buckets, not based on emotion, but based on strategy. 1. Growth, investing, business, education. 2. Protection, savings, emergency funds, insurance. 3. Lifestyle, needs, travel, enjoyment. Every time money enters their world, it moves through this framework automatically. They don't save after they spend. They spend what's left after saving and investing. That single reversal of order, paying yourself first, is one of the most powerful financial principles in existence, because it forces you to live below your means without feeling deprived. It makes wealth automatic, not optional. The 1% don't rely on motivation to save or invest. They rely on automation. They know discipline fails when temptation arrives, so they design systems that protect them from themselves. That's why, even when markets crash, their wealth doesn't vanish, because they built walls of structure around it. This is how the rich get richer, not through luck, through consistency. Their secret isn't that they make more, it's that they lose less. Control is freedom, and freedom begins the moment you give your money direction. Chapter 4. The Wealth Equation, How the Rich Multiply Value. The 1% understand a truth most people ignore. You don't become wealthy by working harder. You become wealthy by multiplying smarter. Every dollar, every skill, every hour, they treat as capital, something that can be multiplied through leverage. They ask, how can I make this dollar work twice? How can I make this skill produce income in multiple ways? How can I turn one action into a system that pays me repeatedly? This is called the wealth equation. Wealth, jack of value, x leverage, x time. Value is what you bring to the world. Leverage is how many people or systems it reaches. Time is how long it continues to pay you. Most people stop at the first part. They create value. But without leverage or time, they stay stuck. The 1% multiply value by building systems. They delegate, they automate, they scale. They use other people's skills, time, and technology to extend their reach. That's not exploitation. It's evolution. They invest in assets that compound. Businesses, real estate, intellectual property. They understand that true wealth is not how much you earn, but how long your money keeps earning when you're not working. They build pipelines, not buckets. Buckets run out. Pipelines flow forever. So ask yourself, do you have buckets or pipelines? A bucket is a paycheck. A pipeline is passive cash flow. A bucket empties when you stop working. A pipeline keeps flowing even when you rest. This is why the 1% focus less on income and more on infrastructure. They design their lives around systems that compound. You don't need millions to start. You need mindset. You can start by saving $1 intentionally, by turning one skill into a product, by building one small system that saves you time. Because leverage starts small, but multiplies fast. Remember, every system that replaces your effort frees up energy to create more value. And that's how exponential wealth begins. Remember, the 1% don't trade time for money. They trade time for freedom. Chapter 5. Mastering Delayed Gratification. Here's the biggest reason most people never build wealth. They can't wait. The average person wants comfort now. The 1% want control later. The difference? Instant gratification versus intentional patience. Most people spend to feel better today, even if it costs them peace tomorrow. The wealthy sacrifice small pleasures for long-term power. When they earn, they don't upgrade their lifestyle. They upgrade their systems. When they receive a bonus, they don't celebrate with consumption. They celebrate with contribution. They understand the concept of delayed gratification, trading temporary pleasure for permanent independence. They aren't misers. They're masters of momentum. They know that every dollar invested today becomes a soldier tomorrow. Every sacrifice now funds freedom later. This mindset doesn't come naturally. It's trained. You must reprogram your reward system. You must learn to get excited not by spending, but by saving. Not by purchases, but by progress. Ask yourself, what gives me more satisfaction? Showing off what I have or knowing I'm building what they can't see? Because true wealth isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the confidence that your future is secure, not the illusion that your present is glamorous. The 1% delay gratification not out of deprivation, but out of design. They understand that time compounds everything, money, effort, and wisdom. And if you master patience, you will eventually own what the impatient can only rent. Remember, the poor want to look rich. The rich want to stay free. Chapter 6. The Power of Cash Flow. Income is vanity. Cash flow is sanity. The 1% don't just count how much they earn, they measure how much flows in without their presence. Cash flow is the oxygen of wealth. It keeps your financial body alive even when markets crash, jobs end, or economies shift. Most people live paycheck to paycheck. The 1% live flow to flow. They don't build savings to spend later. They build systems to pay them forever. They prioritize stability over speed. The goal isn't just to accumulate, it's to circulate, to design streams of income that fund freedom and opportunity. Every decision they make supports this. Jobs lead to equity. Savings lead to investments. Investments lead to cash flow. And cash flow leads to peace. That's why wealthy people rarely panic in downturns. They're not dependent on one source. When others lose their jobs, they lose a paycheck. When the 1% lose a stream, they still have 7 more. This is diversification with purpose, not confusion, but protection. If one income stream feeds your bills, start building a second to feed your dreams. Because the moment you build income that flows without your constant presence, you've stepped out of survival and into sovereignty. And that's what financial freedom truly means. Not luxury, but leverage. Remember, cash flow is freedom in motion. You now understand the structural foundation of how the 1% manage money. Through control, patience, and systems that multiply wealth even in silence. But there's a deeper, more hidden element behind all of this, one that has nothing to do with spreadsheets or numbers. It's the emotional side of wealth, how to think clearly when money tests your patience, relationships, and peace. Chapter 7. Emotional Intelligence with Money. The wealth within money is never just math, it's emotion wearing a suit. People say money changes you, but it doesn't. It reveals you. It shows what you value, what you fear, what you avoid. It amplifies your habits and magnifies your mindset. That's why emotional intelligence, not financial literacy, is the true foundation of wealth. The 1% understand this truth deeply. Wealth begins with awareness. They don't let emotions dictate decisions. They've learned to pause before reacting, to think before spending, to feel before investing. They don't view money as validation. They see it as verification. If your emotions control your wallet, you'll always be broke, no matter your income. But if you control your emotions, you'll always be free, no matter your salary. When markets crash, most people panic. The 1% stay patient because they've trained their nervous system to separate self-worth from net worth. They know losing money doesn't mean losing identity. It just means gaining information. That's emotional mastery, the ability to stay calm when others crumble. The truth is, you'll never out-earn your emotional limits. If you feel unworthy of abundance, you'll reject it. If you feel guilty about success, you'll sabotage it. If you fear losing money, you'll never keep it. That's why the 1% work on their emotions as much as their portfolios. They journal through fear. They reflect on their habits. They heal their financial trauma. The conditioning that says, "I'm not good with money," or "people like me never get ahead." because those beliefs are the invisible fences around your wealth. To manage money like the 1%, you must first manage your mindset around it. Ask yourself, what do I believe about money? Do I see it as security or stress? As opportunity or oppression? Because whatever emotion you attach to money will define your relationship with it. The rich treat money like a relationship based on respect, not obsession. They nurture it. They give it purpose. They never chase it, but they never neglect it either. Emotional intelligence with money means you don't react. You respond. You don't seek validation. You seek value. You don't compare wealth. You create it. And that's how the quiet confidence of the 1% is built, not from arrogance, but awareness. Remember, if you can't manage your emotions, you'll never manage your money. Chapter 8, Investing. Like the 1%. Principles, not predictions. The average investor chases trends. The 1% build timeless principles. Because while most people look for tips, they're looking for truth. They understand that investing isn't gambling, it's strategy. It's not about predicting markets, but preparing for them. When everyone else is guessing, they're studying. When everyone else is emotional, they're patient. The secret? They invest based on values, not vibes. They know that wealth doesn't come from luck. It comes from discipline applied over decades. The 1% follow rules that sound boring, because boring builds. They diversify. They avoid debt traps. They invest consistently, not occasionally. They buy what they understand, not what's trending. They don't chase the next big thing. They master the fundamentals. Their philosophy is simple. Time in the market beats timing the market. That's not just about stocks. That's about every kind of investment. The rich invest in people. They invest in learning. They invest in health. They invest in systems that outlast them. Because money grows where value flows. The poor think in paychecks. The middle class thinks in expenses. The rich think in assets. Every purchase they make must either generate income, preserve value, or increase knowledge. They don't view investing as risky. They view not investing as dangerous, because they understand inflation, taxes, and time all erode stagnant wealth. So they let their money move, but with purpose. When everyone else is driven by excitement, they're driven by evidence. They read, they research, they reflect, and only then they act. The 1% don't try to predict. They prepare, they protect, and they persist. That's their edge, and it's not flashy. It's silent, consistent, powerful. Remember, the 1% don't chase quick profits. They compound quiet principles. Chapter 9, Building Financial Legacy. True wealth isn't measured by how much you make. It's measured by what outlives you. The 1% think generationally. They don't just build for today, they build for a century. Because they understand something most people don't. Money without meaning disappears. Legacy isn't about inheritance, it's about impact. It's about leaving systems, not just savings. Values, not just valuables. They teach their children the mindset of stewardship, how to make money serve purpose. They pass down habits, knowledge, and awareness. They don't give handouts. They give handbooks. Every family has a story. The wealthy choose to rewrite theirs. They stop the cycle of financial chaos. They document what works. They teach the next generation not to repeat old mistakes. That's how legacy grows, through intentional education. If you want to build wealth that lasts, Think beyond your lifetime. What habits will your children inherit from you? What mindset will your story inspire? What systems will survive your presence? Legacy is not about ego. It's about evolution. And it doesn't start when you die. It starts the moment you decide to live differently. Remember, legacy is not what you leave behind. It's who you lift while you're here. Chapter 10. The Silent Power of Simplicity. The richest minds think simply, because complexity hides weakness, but simplicity reveals strength. The 1% don't chase more, they chase better. They simplify their lifestyle. They automate their finances. They focus on fewer, higher quality decisions. They understand that every unnecessary choice drains energy, and energy is the real currency of success. So they simplify. They declutter their expenses. They remove emotional spending triggers. They know that peace of mind is the highest return on investment. Wealth isn't about having everything. It's about having enough and knowing it. When you simplify, you make space for strategy. When you declutter, you create clarity. And clarity compounds into confidence. That's why simplicity isn't poverty. It's power. Because when your mind is calm, your money obeys. When your systems are simple, your results multiply. And when your goals are clear, your actions align. The 1% don't aim to look rich. They aim to stay rich. And that's the quiet, simple secret of success. Remember, simplicity is the sophistication of the wealthy. You've now seen the entire blueprint, from mindset to systems, from patience to principle. But what truly separates the 1% isn't just their knowledge. It's how they live it daily. Up next, we'll bring it all together. How to apply these principles to your own life, how to act with purpose, and how to build a mindset of quiet, lasting freedom. Chapter 11. The Application of the 1%, Living Financial Freedom. Every day, now that you understand how the 1% think, it's time to learn how they live. Because knowledge without application is just information. And information doesn't build wealth. Action does. Financial mastery isn't built in spreadsheets or seminars. It's built in the quiet moments when you decide to act differently than before. The 1% live intentionally. Every decision reflects purpose, not pressure. Every expense is aligned with direction, not distraction. They treat their money like a living system. It breathes, it circulates, it grows, and they know that every action either feeds or depletes that system. They begin each month with clarity, not guessing. They know their inflows and outflows like an artist knows colors. They don't fear their bills, they plan them. They don't dread their statements, they analyze them. This is what financial maturity looks like. You no longer avoid what makes you uncomfortable, you manage it with awareness. Start small. Open your finances like a map. Where does your money actually go? Does it reflect your goals or your habits? Be brutally honest, not to shame yourself, but to shape yourself. The 1% treat money like feedback. Every dollar spent teaches them something. Every mistake becomes a lesson in alignment. They don't aim for perfection, they aim for progress. Because in finance, progress compounds faster than perfection ever could. So start with systems that work for you, not against you. Automate savings, schedule investments, simplify spending. The goal is to remove emotion from what should be structure and add emotion to what should be motivation. You don't have to live like a millionaire to think like one. You just have to design your decisions with purpose. Remember, Managing money like the 1% isn't about having more. It's about mastering what you already have. Remember, wealth isn't built by luck. It's built by lifestyle. Chapter 12, Money and Meaning. The balance of fulfillment. The most successful people in the world understand that money without meaning is misery in disguise. They know that wealth without purpose eventually feels empty. Because money can buy comfort, but not connection. It can buy freedom, but not fulfillment. The 1% never let wealth become their identity. They see it as a resource, not a reason. They use it to create experiences, impact, and stability for others. They give generously, but strategically. They contribute not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. This is the deeper psychology of abundance. When money flows through you, it grows with you. The more you use wealth to elevate others, the more it multiplies your sense of purpose. Ask yourself, what does success mean to me? Is it freedom? Is it peace? Is it legacy? Because if you don't define success, the world will define it for you. And it will always involve more noise, not more peace. The 1% live with alignment between earning and meaning. They earn with ethics. They spend with awareness. They give with intention. That's why they sleep peacefully, not because they have more, but because they live with integrity. Fulfillment doesn't come from accumulation. It comes from alignment, when your actions match your values. So when you manage your money, manage your why too, because your why determines your how. Remember, the richest wealth is a clear conscience. Chapter 13, The Psychology of Enough. Here's the paradox of wealth. If you never feel like you have enough, you'll never truly be rich. You can earn millions and still live in mental poverty. If your definition of enough keeps moving, the 1% understand when to stop chasing and start sustaining. They know that the game of money is endless, but peace is found when you know where to pause. They've trained their minds to separate growth from greed, because greed doesn't grow, it consumes. That's why the wealthiest people you'll ever meet are often the calmest. They've learned the art of satisfaction. They don't measure success by comparison, but by contentment. They don't look sideways. They look forward. And when they do chase goals, it's not to prove something. It's to improve something. You see, the moment you decide what enough means to you, you become unshakable. No market crash, no opinion, no competition can take away your peace. Defining enough is the highest form of freedom because it ends the endless chase. And paradoxically, that peace often attracts more success because when you're no longer desperate for money, you make better decisions about it. You become a calm creator, not a chaotic consumer. Remember, knowing when you have enough is the highest wealth there is. Chapter 14, Money and Relationships. The unspoken test. Money doesn't just test your discipline, it tests your relationships. It exposes values, expectations, and fears. It reveals who's ready to grow with you and who's only comfortable with the old version of you. That's why, as you rise financially, you must learn to communicate with clarity and compassion. The 1% handle money conversations with maturity. They set boundaries without guilt. They give help without enabling. They support others without sacrificing their own structure. They understand that generosity without wisdom leads to resentment. They don't lend what they can't afford to lose. They don't invest emotionally where they should invest logically. And most importantly, they never apologize for financial discipline. You're not selfish for protecting your peace. You're not arrogant for being intentional. You're responsible. The 1% know that if you can't manage boundaries, you lose both money and respect. So they practice transparent communication, even when it's uncomfortable, because real love, real friendship, real partnership all thrive on clarity. If you want healthy relationships, don't just share money. Share vision. Talk about goals. Plan together. Build together. That's how financial alignment becomes emotional alignment. Remember, money doesn't change people. It reveals them. Chapter 15, The Quiet Revolution, Becoming the 1% Within. Here's the ultimate truth. Becoming the 1% isn't about owning more. It's about being more. It's about embodying the mindset that builds freedom. You don't need to inherit wealth to live like the 1%. You just need to inherit their habits, their patience, and their purpose. Because the real 1% don't live above others. They live beyond fear. They make their money work while they rest. They control their emotions while others react. They play the long game while others play for the weekend. And that mindset, that quiet, powerful awareness, is available to anyone who decides to train it. You don't have to wait for a raise, an inheritance, or a miracle. You just have to start managing your money with meaning today. Track it, respect it, multiply it, and most importantly, direct it. That's the blueprint. That's the mindset. That's the freedom. Remember, the 1% isn't a class. It's a consciousness. You've now learned how the world's wealthiest people think, act, and sustain their power. But there's one last piece: how to turn these principles into daily reality, so wealth becomes not something you chase, but something you become. Chapter 16, The Daily Practice of Wealth. Wealth is not a moment. It's a method. It's not a finish line. It's a daily practice. The 1% don't wake up one day and find themselves rich. They build routines that keep them rich. Because financial freedom is less about what you know and more about what you do repeatedly. It's in the choices you make when no one's watching. It's in the self-control you show when temptation whispers. It's in the quiet tracking, the small habits, the daily discipline that adds up silently. Wealth is built one decision at a time, one day at a time. That's the truth most people don't want to hear. They want the shortcut, the hack, the secret. But the 1% know there is no shortcut. There is only structure. Here's how they practice wealth daily. They review, not react. They check their accounts not to stress, but to stay aware. They record, not rationalize. Every expense tells a story, so they write it down. They plan, not panic. When bills come, they've already prepared. When goals change, they adjust the plan, not their purpose. They invest weekly, even in small amounts. Because frequency beats fortune, they reflect monthly on habits, wins, and lessons. Because feedback is the fertilizer of growth. That's what makes the 1% powerful. They turn money management into a lifestyle, not an event. And once it becomes a lifestyle, it becomes automatic. Ask yourself right now, what's one financial habit I can do every day without fail? Tracking, saving, reading, visualizing. Do it daily, and your identity will evolve. Because repetition rewires reality. This is the hidden secret behind every wealthy individual. Their systems run while others sleep. They don't chase motivation. They rely on rhythm, and the greatest rhythm of all, consistency. Remember, discipline builds what motivation only dreams of. Chapter 17. When the world changes, the 1% adapts. Markets shift, trends evolve, currencies rise and fall. But the 1% never panic because their foundation isn't built on conditions. It's built on adaptability. They don't marry methods, they marry principles. They know that change is constant, and instead of fearing it, they prepare for it. That's what keeps them relevant, resilient, and ready. When the economy slows, they double down on learning. When industries collapse, they innovate new ones. When inflation hits, they protect assets. When uncertainty grows, they grow calmer, because they've learned that uncertainty is the price of opportunity. You can't control the economy, but you can control your economy, your budget, your focus, your energy, your education. These are assets no market can touch. The 1% understand the difference between prediction and preparation. Prediction makes you reactive. Preparation makes you proactive. They don't try to guess the next big thing. They build mental and financial systems strong enough to survive anything. And that's how they stay ahead, not by being faster, but by being flexible. Flexibility is the most underrated form of intelligence, because when the world changes, it's not the strongest who win, it's the most adaptable. Remember, the 1% don't fear change, they profit from it. Chapter 18, Protecting Your Peace, Protecting Your Wealth. There's a kind of wealth that doesn't show up in your net worth, peace of mind. You can't manage money like the 1% if you live like the 9% emotionally. Anxious, reactive, impulsive. The 1% protect their peace as fiercely as their portfolio, because they know the calmer the mind, the smarter the decision. When emotion rises, intelligence falls. That's why they build boundaries around energy, not just money. They limit the noise. They don't scroll through fear-driven media. They don't compare lifestyles online. They don't get trapped in endless debates about who's right. They focus on what's real. They cultivate peace through routine, exercise, silence, reflection, because they understand mental health is the highest ROI investment you'll ever make. You can't make wise financial moves from a restless mind. You can't build lasting wealth in emotional chaos. So the 1% slow down to think clearly. They breathe before buying. They rest before reacting. They respond. They don't explode. Their peace is not weakness. It's weaponry. It allows them to see opportunity where others see threat, to act rationally when others act rashly. Your ability to stay calm in chaos determines your capacity to keep wealth. So protect your peace. It's not a luxury, it's leverage. Remember, peace is the profit of emotional discipline. Chapter 19, The Education Never Ends. The richest minds are the most curious ones. The 1% never stop learning because they know ignorance is the most expensive debt in existence. They invest more in education than in entertainment. They read more books than they buy luxuries. Epilogue. Your declaration. Take a breath. This is where it begins. Not the end, but the evolution. Say it out loud. I will manage my money like the 1%. I will think, act, and plan with purpose. I will build freedom, not just fortune, and I will use my wealth to create meaning. That's your declaration, your commitment, not to impress anyone, but to remind yourself you are the architect of your financial destiny. Because the 1% didn't just build systems, they built standards. And now, so will you. So hit like as your promise to yourself. Comment which chapter hit hardest. Share this audiobook with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's ready to rise. And subscribe to continue your journey into deeper mastery of wealth, mindset, and freedom. You've learned how to manage money like the 1%. Now go live it. Disclaimer: this audiobook is for motivational and educational purposes only. It is not financial or investment advice. Always consult a licensed professional before making financial decisions. The purpose of this audiobook is to inspire discipline, awareness, and responsibility toward personal growth and wealth management. The 1% don't wait for opportunity, they build it one decision at a time.